Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Wilson.
And I'm Chris Hemke.
And this is my very last episode on Diesel Performance Podcast.
This is how you're going to drop the information?
That's it, man. Yeah, right at the top.
Damn.
Right at the top.
There's going to be a little follow-up to this after our interview today.
After our interview.
All right.
I'm not real interested in making a big deal out of it.
I think we need to make a big deal about it.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed it. I love this show. But yeah, this is my last episode on the podcast.
Oh, the listeners love you. They've always loved us arguing over the years.
That is true.
Right? So
that is true.
You'll have to do a guest appearance every so often. We'll have to do something.
I'm down.
We'll
I'm down.
do a reconnect.
Yeah.
But
I could always fuck around and talk with you, Chris. But for today, we have something way bigger going on
way bigger than
me.
you leaving me and breaking up with me on air. Yeah.
We have the one and only Kory Willis. Kory, how the hell are you?
What's happening, guys? I'm a little disappointed to hear it's your last episode here.
Well, we wanted to have a banger, so it's his last episode, and it's with you. So,
yeah,
what better chances?
Man, I feel special. Hey, I get it. We'll wait till the last episode. I mean, I've got some hot stuff going on, and then bounce out and leave them with the problems. I know his game plan. He's not fooling anybody, right?
Just to be clear, the podcast is going to keep going. Right. Chris is going to keep crushing it. He's a killer podcast host. So I think you're going to bring somebody on. You're not going to do it solo act.
I got a couple guys that were venting right now to see vetting right now who we're going to get.
There's a couple of people still willing to talk to Chris in the office.
I have not burnt every bridge with coworkers in the office. So
Still hope, yeah. But Kory, no helicopters flying over right now. Y'all good?
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
For now at least.
But Kory, speaking of having big stuff going on, we have been following your social media feed, and there's so much that you talk about in there. I think the first thing we wanted to hone in on is some EPA activity. So we've seen with the new administration that there's some changes coming to EPA and DOJ when it comes to emissions enforcement. What can you tell us?
I'm kind of out of the loop as much as anyone is to knowing what's going to come. This administration moves so fast, but I've been working with Clay for many years, Clay Higgins, on this topic, and he's on the committee that's doing a lot of the investigations into it. I mean, it's one of them real touchy topics, but I'll say whatever I can. The thing is like, we understand the Clean Air Act, but we only understand it as clear as what the government's given it to us, right? We've all been at SEMA, and year after year, they'll say something different, all the way to the point that you'll have the EPA arguing with CARB on stage, like trying to explain how enforcement works. So it's been, and it's like that by design, right? Just like every, the EPA is not necessarily a NGO, but if you look at how a lot of the NGOs operate, like the wings and the extensions of the EPA, it makes perfect sense how all of this propaganda came about and put people into hysteria. And with that hysteria, you can start implementing new regulations, new procedures, new everything, So, I mean, it's pretty undebated that the world kind of went absolutely stupid over the past 10 years and people lost their minds on the climate change thing. Imagine that topic, right? Where no one has anything measured worth of crap and the science is junk by design. I mean, that's familiar from 2020, right? Trust the science. So what I think everyone's starting to learn and the public's starting to accept a little bit more is like, hey, this stuff they've been telling us might not be completely true. They might have created a larger fish out of the story. So what needs to happen with all of that, and I think what's happening, as we've seen from the Oversight Committee letter, they're going to look into all of these things. Why, we've seen videos of, I've had my own issues with them, but even more so is like small guys that people don't even know their names, sold just a couple of tunes or something online, and then they've got cops coming to their house at 6 a.m., searching their vehicles without warrants, holding them at gunpoint with their wives there in a battering ram with their children inside. For what? A freaking tune? Or, they, heaven forbid, they put an exhaust on their truck. That's the type of enforcement that they've come down with. It's kind of like what they've done with the whole weaponization of it, just like they've done everything else. And so I think what the committee needs to look into, and what they're looking into, is, was this politically motivated, Is there actual action or cause that necessitated this? And I think what they're going to end up uncovering is a lot of nastiness that happened that wasn't supposed to happen.
Now, how would you respond, Kory? I've heard this at the sewing circles. I've heard this quietly whispered in the background. There are guys in the industry that blame you for the DOJ becoming involved, and the rationale is that you fought fines, that you were a millionaire, you could have just paid the fines and moved on and kept quiet and kept moving, but because you kept fighting with the EPA in such a public way and then posting pictures of super expensive boats and super expensive cars, that it pissed off the guy who was making $30,000 a year, who worked at the EPA, and he said fuck it, and he called up his buddy who works at the Department of Justice and said, what can we do, let's go get him. How do you respond to that?
With facts. So we'd have to actually go back in time before PPEI was actually big or anything like that. We seen people getting popped left and right. We didn't see the actual criminal enforcement stuff really get popular until roughly around 2019.
Yep.
That was at the same time that we were seeing everything else in the world become absolutely crazy as well. So, and especially now with the data that we're starting to see of how the money flowed through all of these NGOs that weaponized this whole system, it's pretty clear that you just had an administration go ballistic. Because if someone's just saying, oh, the Kory or someone pissed off the DOJ and now they came after all of us. Well, it's so much bigger than that. That's like bird brain mentality, very small thinking of someone that's likely never going to be a millionaire. Whenever you want to make money or you want to look forward or accomplish a task, you need to look way ahead and then look back at history also. In this case, the same organizations that were coming after us and was being influenced in America are right now straight up holding Germany and that other side of the West like it's ballistic. And then we have truckers, like remember the Canadian trucker thing? I don't think that came about under Kory. This is much bigger than like people are looking at it like it's the EPA, but it's not really the EPA. Like, I'm not trying to wear a tinfoil hat here, but when you follow the money, the money is coming from these globalist organizations that's ultimately been funded a lot by USAID. Stuff kind of like Earth Justice and Climate Action Now, Democrat for Institution for Democracy. All of these type of things flow so much money. For example, like I paid that $3 million fine or whatever. Right after that, you've seen and I'm not saying it came from me because they have billions of dollars, but right after that, you see $3 million plus go to a Free Palestine movement funded by the EPA. So people's thoughts of like one single action caused this is wild. They had plans way before him implemented in to try to get rid of all the combustion vehicles. So it was more of a timing thing than anything else. And realistically, I would have on day one, probably could have settled the fine if I just gave in and said, no problem, let's go. But my thing was I was like, can I get the definition of like how I can legally sell race parts? Because I did the things that basically we had said at SEMA, or that was said at SEMA, and we thought that would be the standard. There's got to be some type of standard, so that way I can sell a turbocharger. Instead of the standard being like, okay, you sold too many, so we think you're a bad guy, and we're going to go after you and let the other guys keep selling turbos, no problem.
And there's not a quantity of too many. It's a gray.
Correct. And that's the thing is before they would try to say there's this quantity, there's that quantity, but they had never give you a specific number. And I know of some cases going on right now that the quantities are absolutely all over the place. So the inconsistencies from the government it is probably going to be a problem for them under these investigations. But I do know where the enforcement actually got tipped off and was really started to get hot was a very long time ago. And it actually happened in Denver, Colorado. As jokingly as it sounds, someone literally blew smoke on somebody, and that somebody ended up working in the EPA, and they were like, hey, why did that do that? And then it started out of an agent from Denver, Colorado that had gotten smoke blown on them by someone back in long time ago.
When you say Colorado, I thought you were going to throw Clint Cannon under the bus for the infamous letter
Jesus.
from the ex-employee. I'll bring up all the trash. It's my last episode.
Man, that Clint early on, he got really racked through the coals early on.
He did.
We interviewed Clint. That might have been Danny. I don't know if you were here, but I've talked to Clint about this. So this is like I'm not like throwing him under the bus by any means. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there was a letter that came out. An ex-employee wrote that basically said that all of the EPA enforcement is all Clint's fault because he was pissed that H&S was selling tuners and he was getting in trouble for something with like his local EPA rep. And so he wrote a letter that said, why are you coming after me? You should go after them. They're the ones that are really fucking up the environment. And that this is like the most shorthand I could make a very interesting and long story. Clint has defended himself time and time again. I have no reason not to believe Clint Cannon. He's a stand-up guy.
And I've sat on the side with Clint with a lot of these conversations, and he is always there to put his money where his mouth was as to, what can we do to get some clarity?
Yeah.
And bring some overall, let's bring some get rid of the waste and bring some efficiency into this whole entire process because no one understands what they can and can't do or what's going on.
Well, I mean, what's crazy to me is while all this is going on, it's also shifting because it's quote unquote wrong or illegal. Now, I think like that's one of the main drivers for why people want to delete their trucks because they're told they can't. And then you have so many other companies, out of the country, right, for the most part, and they're making money now hand over fist with a less superior product, right, and a less superior support.
Yeah, I think back to the old days, there was always dog shit tuners out there.
Right, but but that's all you get now.
Yeah,
and like people are risking their truck because they want to be outlaws and do something that they're told they can't do when they're actually ruining the truck even further with some shoddy ass tunes from a lot of these shops that are not reputable.
I still come back to blaming the OEMs in such a real way for producing such dog shit parts. With dog shit technology, with dog shit reliability, that I think that's the number one driver. I think if we think back to like social media replies, Facebook posts, go through and read it, so many guys' journey to getting a delete start with a check engine light. Yeah. Would you guys agree with that, Kory?
Well, the only problem is I think the OEMs are being put in unrealistic scenarios. Take the 6.0 for example. The 6.0 would have worked fantastic. But whenever these regulations at the last minute started doing their thing and now they're going to require EGRs, well, they put the OEMs in unrealistic situations for development. I feel it's the same way for these after treatment systems because you guys know as well as me. In a perfect world, they will work well.
Yeah.
But in an imperfect world, such as your stupid boost clamp caught just a little bit of a leak because 10,000 plus nuts and bolts all over this engine. If one comes slightly loose, now your emission system can be ruined.
Yeah.
Or slowly deteriorated. Likewise, it's a complete scam, and I can't say what I want, but someone should be held extremely accountable for the fact that after the aged life of the engine, right? These things are considered aged at what? Is it 120,000 miles? I think max like 150. Yeah. And then you've got the guys that actually use them how they're supposed to. Their truck lived in a perfect world, and you'll hear these very rare stories of people going 200 and something thousand miles on their OEM emission systems. Right. When we have million-mile engines, it's so wrong. It's so freaking wrong to force let's say a farmer or anyone to have to spend $6 to $12,000 to replace their emission system because it hit the life of the engine or the life of the system itself, and then tell this guy he's got to spend $6 to $12,000 to replace the emission system on a how much degraded engine? How much is the powertrain
life
downgraded from?
Right. Yeah.
So whenever we take and we're gonna have to put brand new emission system on a 120,000 mile engine. Do you think that's going to have a 120,000 mile emissions life, or is that a climate tax that they're going to have to replace again because the whole dang thing's a scam?
Well,
that's the big picture. And the manufacturers, I don't think that they can. I think for what they're given, they do a pretty good job. But think of how aggressive the government has been on the manufacturers to actually keep these processes going up and up and up. And without having tons of them in the field, I don't know how an OEM can get it right.
Yeah.
I
think it's just a bad situation.
I guess what's tough on my end to look at is we'll take the worst emissions system out of a Duramax lineup, right? And I think we'd all agree the LMM leaves a lot to be desired.
Oh yeah,
trash.
And I had a guy call in last week, 230,000 miles on a all original truck. The guy was from out west, and the catalytic converter is failing, and he can't get the part. No dealer has
Right.
it. It's not even a
can't
back
find
order.
them.
It's just not manufactured.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of the aftermarket companies that have kind of stepped up to offer some of that
I was
stuff.
going to say, because we have found aftermarket DPFs that
There's
are
a
like,
couple
we'll
options.
retrofit into it,
There's
and
a
they're
couple options.
$2,000.
They're expensive, and
Yeah.
it's you look at the price of an LMM, and it's like, on paper the LMM is a nice truck, right?
Sure.
But the truck isn't worth putting $5,000 or $6,000 into an emission system at 200 and some thousand miles. It's just not.
No,
And how do you go
there's
in-
no LMM right now. You'll go put a new emission system on it. That thing's
No.
gonna be degraded so fast.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
But how do you go and tell that person on the other end, like, yeah, man, you really are shit out of luck.
Go buy a new truck.
Go buy
Yeah,
a new truck.
especially
lose your
and on
ass.
top of that, especially in this economy, right?
Right.
Where it's not that inviting with interest rates to go get a loan.
No.
Like, are people supposed to get a loan to fix their truck? I don't know that many people with $6,000 to $12,000 just sitting in their account to put in a truck to burn.
for an exhaust.
You know,
Hold on.
That owns an older truck.
$6,000 to $12,000, and maybe that if anybody wants go fast parts, everyone can find a way to put a trans in or a turbo, but $6,000, $8,000 to put a canister and sensors in their truck so they can make it to work for a
Right.
living, like, it's just completely
And-
absurd.
It is.
And that's the thing, they were trying to do the CO2 argument. I think that argument is finally starting to fall flat on its face. So they'll move to other stuff. But it's just like NOx. Like, all right, let's take a brand new truck. Within literally 5 lightning strikes produces the amount of NOx into the air that truck does over its life cycle of the emission system. So whenever I see a storm, and it's like not uncommon out here, and I get 100 lightning strikes in 1 hour, it's like, dang, I could have had a lot of trucks.
You could have had a lot of trucks. Dollar signs.
But yeah, exactly. But the another thing too is, like, on our fight, it was one of them things where I didn't want to fight. I just wanted to find out, like, how I could legally sell race parts, right? If that I sell 10,000 emissions in a year and only 10 race tunes, that's okay, because at least we would have some guidelines.
Right.
So that's what I was really, really for a long time trying hard to get that information, and I learned really, really quickly that it wasn't really that much about emissions by itself, but it was more of a movement, like a tribal movement. Because I tried to have conversations and, even got to speak with the EPA lead engineer and make good headway. And those conversations just go nowhere. They just get shut down and, we're spoke to like we're idiots.
Now, do you think it's because they don't know what they're necessarily talking about and understanding the processes? Or
Well, I think part of it was, for one, a lot of these engineers, they've got some good folks over there, but at the same time, they're trained by the system, right? You go to a doctor and, they preach the food pyramid to you, and scientifically, quote unquote, that's correct, right? But why are we so fat? Well, obviously something's not right. So now what we're learning is, well, maybe the science actually that we were given wasn't correct. And so you've got doctors and health specialists and everybody throughout the country being like, well, we aren't really sure if what we know is right. I think that's where a lot of everything with government kind of is right now. And I would be willing to say, I think that's where the EPA is going to land as well. And I know that because one of the people that used to be over the Department of Justice environmental section that we worked with, their minds were completely blown when I started breaking down to them why these emission systems fail, how much they cost. That 5 lightning strikes is actually equivalent to the lifespan of this diesel. So it's like even the measurement system. If you hear someone say, "Oh, there's a million metric tons released into the atmosphere," it's like, well, what is that? Sounds really, really, really bad, but what does that mean? It's like, oh, that's like, you seen how that volcano blew a little quick puff out like this morning before 5 a.m.? Like, yeah, that's what it was. It's like, oh, okay, well, it sounds really good if I say that, I ran 3 miles and that took Godzilla inches to run, but I should have just said 3 miles, but it sounds way worse when I say Godzilla inches.
that makes sense.
So that's kind of how everything is starting to play out. But the big deal with the oversight committee thing is, I think they need to look into everyone's stuff and find out, what's kind of been going on over there. There's been some really, really strange things that happened in our case that I really wish I could just talk freely about, but with the investigation, I'll let it go on. But that really, really were nasty, really, really, really nasty. And, whenever I started first asking about the emissions questions and, trying to get to some type of understanding of what we can and can't do, which never happened, they got pretty nasty on me in the process. If you ask questions, that's not good. You're just supposed to say yes and move on. And, because I was asked questions, I was facing potentially $40 million in fines and 7+ years in prison. So it got pretty heavy and got really, really, really weird. It became a fight that I really couldn't walk out of.
Can you settle one of the other debates that I've seen in some of the smaller circles? Are you on house arrest?
Yes, I am. So that they got me 10 months house arrest, so I can go to work and I can go home.
That sucks. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Because we talked to the first guy to get sentenced over the conspiracy charge. Was out of Alaska. Was it Mike Hanzuk?
Yeah.
That feels right. He called in, did an interview. He also got house arrest. Now, keep in mind, he was a 1/3 owner of a company that over a 3-year timeline had done $100,000 worth of delete business.
Wow.
They were all 3 charged with felonies, not allowed to talk to each other, and he put on house arrest. So, like, it's you would think Alaska, the last frontier of America,
of
right?
All places.
They were the first ones, which we really thought was that precedent, right? Like, that's the way the legal system works. Is once you hit one person with precedent, that usually everybody, okay, well, if you were more of a violator, more time, and less of a violator, less time. I don't remember exactly what his sentence was.
I thought it was 6 months.
That feels right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's wild to see because that was years ago that it happened.
Yeah, and we've seen guys like there's guys that's gone to prison for a long time. There's some that got off without even just a basic probation. It's super inconsistent.
But isn't it?
I don't understand why the law is so inconsistent. That's strange to me.
Isn't it all by like territories or by like the area in which you're being?
I think it's a federal crime.
I think it honestly lands on which investigator you got and just how woke they are. It's like I'm being 100% honest about that. And I could be wrong. Everything I'm saying is my opinion, but I mean, I've looked at well over 100 cases.
Yeah.
And a lot of it goes back to because a lot of the people, I'll say this, a lot of the people doing the prosecuting, these people are retards. I'm just going to say it how it is. They're absolutely, they're crazy, woke people. Some of them are really good people. I've met some people over there that legitimately want to do the right thing. They only have the knowledge from the information that they have, which a lot of it's bad information because, their sources suck. But some of them there, it's nothing to do with, like, I know this sounds crazy, and I've said it for a while, but it's like they've made this their religion, right? So it's not just about the climate, it's the whole thing. I haven't met anyone up there in dealing with this, which, I've been through probably easily 15, 20 plus interrogations over the years, like crazy stuff. And outside of the select few that, I've met, a lot of these folks, it's more tribal, I guess is the way you could say it. It's like they're on the side of what they believe and what they think is winning while not actually thinking about the topic that they're prosecuting about. That's not saying their prosecution's right or wrong. It's just there is some personal hatred that I've seen come about over the years in D.C. that just kept growing, just absolutely kept growing.
It is wild. It is wild to see where it's gone. When I got into this industry, it was right around the time that I think Edge caught a fine, H&S got a big fine. It's like that was right at the start of my career in diesel. And I remember there being talks about, like, are they just going to go after the big guys? Are they going to go after, this is Harley got hit for Screaming Eagle tuners and pipes and shit. So we're like, well, these guys are pretty huge. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
H&S was the biggest fucking delete tuning supply at the
Yeah,
time
for sure.
by far. So we're like, okay, well, they're just going to hit these guys. And then you get down to 2020, and one of my friends down in Arkansas has a small shop. He's a local shop. He doesn't do any advertising. He is 100% referral business. Fuck, he ran his business on 100% cash until like a year ago or something. He might still pay all of his employees in cash. He got a fucking certified letter in the mail that just was an RFI. He never got a visit. He never got an inspection.
Mm-hmm.
He was so small potatoes compared to where it started, right? You starting with $20 million, $40 million a year companies, and then you're down to a guy who keeps his books on a handwritten ledger. It's like, who's the target?
Right.
You know, I think the thing that a lot of people
how
have
are
always
they on
been
the radar, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's that whole like, oh, go to a business, give them an RFI.
It's because everybody snitches.
Well,
it's because
that's-
everybody
the
fucking
books don't
snitches.
lie.
I get
Everyone's a paper
so
trail.
mad. I get so mad about this. So they show up and they're like, "Hey, you're a tuner. Here's your fine," right? Because you don't. It's not like a court thing. They're just like, "Yeah, here, give us all the information to prove you're guilty." That's an RFI. Then you get your NOV. Here's your notice of violation. Because of the information we required you to give us to prove that you're guilty, here's your violation. Oh, and by the way, we need receipts so we know who you sold it to. Then they go over to the guy who you sold it to, and they're like, "Hey, you're a distributor. You sold this to another end user." They're like, "Yeah, cool. You're getting fined too." So hold on, how many people are you going to fine for this part?
For the same.
Well, at the same time as well, that allows them to wrap in the conspiracy charge, right? Because I think that there's a good 80+% chance someone can smash them in a Clean Air Act argument, especially with Chevron gone. Maybe higher than 80. I'm pretty positive that argument's there. But the way that they do the conspiracy charges, you're not, forget about the Clean Air Act argument because they wrap it in with conspiracy. And the way they do the conspiracy charges, if Shop A gets a good price and they sell it to Shop B, well, that's considered a conspiracy. And so, there's no, I pled guilty to it. If you wanted to beat it, you're not going to beat it.
Yeah.
Because
it is conspiracy.
That's what they label a conspiracy.
It is.
It's a conspiracy.
Yes. By definition. I'm not saying that's right or wrong or somebody should or shouldn't
That's
be.
That's it. Like, I pled to it. It's like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
But by their definition, that is what it is. So no matter what, you got the part from somebody. So they got you on conspiracy.
The idea that they can
they
write
use this
3 people
conspiracy
fined for selling the same tune, I think, is the part that just drives me fucking nuts. I'm like, that's the part that, like, I don't understand. I don't understand how you could look at that and be like, this is the right move.
Yeah, and it's like another thing too is like people said like snitch. I know there are like snitches in the industry.
I said
I've
snitch.
literally
I called people snitches.
I've seen morons going on literally like sponsored ads of other people's pages and like commenting people's names trying to get them in trouble with the EPA, which is
ridiculous.
This weirdest, stupidest thing. But what I think generally happens is the EPA comes in. They get all your QuickBooks, right? You're like, if someone's stupid enough, you're like, you can't have my QuickBooks. No problem. They're going to come take them.
Right.
Yeah.
So they get the QuickBooks, and then they'll go through the list, kind of like with what y'all said, and then they'll sit back in front of you and be like, did you sell this to this person? And it'd be like, well, you have my QuickBooks. Why don't you tell me? I don't remember everybody. So I think that's what they do to a lot of folks. And in the process of it, what is someone, because I've had people reach out and say, man, ask about you and da da da. It's like, man, they got your QuickBooks, bro. Like, I don't hide nothing. My website was public. You click the buttons publicly. I wasn't saying EGR fix kits and all the other stupid stuff and weight loss, Jenny Craig, whatever other low IQ thoughts.
Can we talk about the dumbass phrasing, the codes, the little codes that we think we're guys? Fucking knock it off.
They're not
knock
that
it
stupid.
Off.
Like it literally looks so stupid.
The simple fact that and the thing, Kory, you have to agree with what I'm about to say. The customer that's going to delete a truck now wasn't the same guy 10 years ago. The guy now that gets into diesel today might not even know who Kory Willis or PPEI is. He's going to go on a forum and he's going to look at doing a tune, doing whatever, not knowing the severity of the millions and millions and millions of dollars in fines that have taken place. And they come into this industry learning about Jenny Craig, diets, neuters, potholes.
That's the dumbest one on. I cannot fucking believe it's like the kid who gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar and says, "I wasn't doing it."
Right.
It's like,
Right.
The fuck. Do you really expect? It's the dumbest thing on earth to call, because we get this one on Facebook a lot. We get this one on the phone call. Yeah, I was driving down the road, hit a pothole, my exhaust fell off. Can I get a delete tune? It's like the.
Or you'll have the people
What fucking
on there.
code did you like? Are we doing sovereign citizen shit now? What are we doing?
Dude,
Knock it off.
Guys will call in and you're like, well, I don't really want to say this on the phone. Motherfucker, you're not on a recorded line. Just talk with your chest. Just say it. I don't give a shit. But
Yeah, that's the thing, man. And people don't understand as well. Like, it's not like the old days where you catch like just a penalty and you move on.
No.
They're coming after you, your family, everybody that works for you. Everyone. I mean, my 78-year-old grandmother had gotten a letter in the mail, which with a little bit of money we made go right away. Oh, yeah, son. I'm talking. This stuff gets deep. Another thing, too, is I don't think it was just about deletes, like, at all. I think a lot of my case probably had something to do with something else. But what do I know?
What else?
Curious.
What do we mean?
We'll have to see. I don't know. I think we'll just have to wait for the investigations to see what the end motive was there.
You're being so elusive. Just say it, man.
you can't. It's under investigation.
It's me, Hino, which is owned by Toyota, and that company out of Alaska that letter came out about. So, I think we'll let them do their investigations and we'll find out, because all I got speculation based off of many years of research and data. So, we'll just have to see. And
now,
maybe some FOIAs.
Now, do you
We'll see.
do you have hopes that this is all going to get reversed or expunged? Do you see deletes becoming legal again? Where do you?
Deletes were never legal. Don't be the customer. That's another thing we got to talk about.
Well, before the Clean Air Act in '76,
Well,
before DPFs existed, it was fine.
The 70s were kind of a bad era for America. We did a lot of stupid stuff. Things started trending down pretty bad from the 70s, lit from the original emissions agreement from the 60s, the original Clean Air Act. That one would work way better than the one from the 70s.
Yeah, probably.
That'd be way better. What I think will end up, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening, right? I'm not saying that deletes are going to come back. That's not even what I'm fighting or advocating for. What I'm fighting and advocating for is for legitimate science, and for people. The number one goal for me is for these consent decrees to not require California. That is one of my hottest topics, and that's what was mentioned in the oversight letter also. Like, my California situations, I submitted EOs forever ago. At CARB, we set the highest power done at CARB. Congratulations, right? Get all that done on every platform, submit it to CARB, and they were basically telling me that, like, they don't approve of the devices that we're using. And I'm like, hey, other guys have gotten these devices EO'd. Well, they changed the process in 2022 for reasons that I hope come out later on, because it's all speculation. But in 2022, they changed it. And so I couldn't use an Easy Link to get anything approved. So I'm like, I couldn't sell my emissions approved, which the Easy Link wasn't a problem. And then suddenly in 2022, I don't know what happened. It became a problem. So it's almost like the EPA contacted CARB and said, hey, you shouldn't do this, even though it passes. So who knows? We'll see what ended up coming about. But it's totally crazy, because I've spent, I think, almost $100,000 on these stupid EOs. All my stuff's there. And then it's not, I still haven't gotten my stuff back yet.
And I take it they also haven't denied you. So they just let it sit in limbo. They never denied us.
Yeah, even better than that, CARB told us that we're having an issue because of a misunderstanding they had in 2022. So there's a lot of there's some weird stuff. There's some real weird stuff that happened right in the middle of that Biden area of 2022, when things got really crazy around the world, but also with us. And that's what I'm kind of curious to see, is like, how did this escalate so much to the point that, like, my great grandmother gets a letter, my mom gets a letter, and then I pay $150,000 and the letter goes away. Like, and that was over LMM, which I guess that's what the letter was for, but over LMMs, right? So remember, you could get a truck approved. So let's say you did a 17 Duramax. Remember at CARB, that would cover the models underneath it.
Right.
You could do the latest model and it would cover it.
Yep.
So when we did it, that's the understanding. Okay, cool. I did the latest year model. Now I can come in and that covers everything else. Well, lo and behold, I get smashed for LMMs. I got fined $150,000 for selling emissions present LMM tuning that passes FTP test, because I didn't know that California changed that stupid regulation or whatever. Which, hey, not knowing the law, that's my fault, right? Right? I'm supposed to hit refresh on CARB's page every day and make sure that out of the 50,000 regulations of pages they have, that I spotted that one line. So I did 100% make a mistake there by not doing that. And the result cost me $150,000, emissions present LMM.
Wow.
That passes 49 state tests, and I don't sell to California.
That's so wild.
That's wild, isn't it?
That is insane.
But you add this. Imagine California is not giving your EO approval, but your deadline on your consent decree says you have to have it within 2 years. So they give you extensions for a little while because of the issues at CARB. But then one day the person at DOJ says, hey, I'm not going to honor you another extension. And it's like, well, hey, hold on. Like CARB just said that I have no problems. It's on their end. So would you give me the extension? And I was told this may be a hardship and burdensome for you, but our position's not changing. So we took legal action, and that's where they're at today. And my company's deadline was April 15th. And I'm not talking about the legal stuff going on in the background, but what's today?
24th.
24th? Yeah.
That's wild.
Holy shit.
There's a lot of craziness, man.
So
crazy.
Where do you go from here?
So from here, we've got a lot of stuff we're working on at the office that we've really been working on these past 5 years, because I can only sell 20% of what we offer. So PPEI has been surviving, thankfully, because I've got other investments in other companies, and also off of its own revenue. So and it's gotten over the past couple of years where it can carry its own weight with its own revenue. But I carried it through my other companies for years from my other companies because it had no revenue, and I didn't want to get rid of my employees because I have just a killer team over here. So, it really, really put a bad hurting on us, but thankfully we made it through. Just in the past 5 years, we spent roughly $6-7 million on attorneys and whatnot.
Fuck me.
Mm-hmm.
Chris can't even get words out right now. He looks like he's fucking frozen on a Zoom call.
Hey, that's since we stopped selling the race stuff. That's been during emissions present land, because I went through 5 years of nearly 5 years of civil investigations. We get all of that stuff wrapped up. I agree to a penalty, and then right after I agreed, I got served the criminal subpoena. So I got double whacked for another 5 years.
Jeez.
So I've been in this crap. Yeah, I've been in this crap for 10 years.
More of PPEI's life has been spent in litigation than out of litigation. Is that where we're at this point?
Pretty much.
Oh yeah. Because we've been in lawsuits.
If your truck's been on the rack more than it's been on the road, we say to scrap it.
Hey, you want to add another crazy layer into it. In 2020, freaking we get a hurricane that came in and smashed all my buildings and everything we got and my home. So while we're dealing with all of that, we were also dealing with all the government stuff at the same time. And I had 2-3+ lawsuits going on with insurance companies because they were going bankrupt in Louisiana. So we're bankrolling 5-6+ lawsuits for years and years and years. Wasn't costing me less than $50,000. I haven't had a month until the past few months that I haven't had $50,000 almost in expensive legal fees.
I'm just in awe.
Fuck that.
It's crazy. Wow. So you've got to be able to work.
I'd have started selling Coke years ago. Fuck that shit.
I mean, I thought tuning trucks was an easier alternative. Clearly, it's not.
Yeah, dude, it was. But the thing is none of this should have ever happened. Have ever happened the way it happened, right? We should have dealt with it. It is what it is. It is what it is. We accept the responsibility and.
What motivates you to keep moving forward? After everything you've gone through with all the shit going on, you love diesels in the industry that much?
Man, I think I love my team because at the office, everybody sees us for just tuning, but we do tons of R&D. We work with tons of other companies. We've got a lot of our own software and hardware that's going to be coming out this year. And I see we're doing a ton of AI at the office, and we're basically been working on implementing a lot of AI into our systems. And we'll have an app and some cool stuff coming out in the near future. And I think it's going to be super, super cool. You know, I really like the idea of the future of the industry with incorporating like large language models into systems. I think it's going to get really, really, really cool and fun. So I see a big future in the industry. I know that like the ECUs and everything's getting tighter and it's getting harder to tune. But likewise, if that becomes the case, then we'll relive the days of plug and plays.
Right.
They're always going to get modified one way or the other. It's just how long does it take before someone says, okay, we need to start looking the other way and quit trying to get into this OBD system.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that has always been the joke, right? It's like, I know every time a new model comes out, there's this like huge panic of like, oh my God, it's NSA level encryption on the L5P. And
Right.
then like 2 years later, we're like,
Exactly.
oh shit, hold on. If you move this little piece of the microchip, it's fine. And then it's global
Right.
B. We'll never tune global B. And then all of a sudden we're tuning global B. And I'm like,
Exactly.
okay,
So it's one of them things. I think some of the newer controllers, like I think the Ford's a different animal. I think the 24, 25 L5P, like I think that's doable. The new Fords and the new Rams, man, that's going to be a challenge. I mean, more hope for the Ram than the Ford, but
yeah.
my guys, because I'm not the genius at that world. We've got other folks on payroll that are way smarter than me in that world, and they're like, hey, these are pretty screwed. Like the 24, 25s, like all right, you know, we're toying around like today. We've got a 25 Ram here. And, you know, I'm a little late to the Ram party. I seen y'all already got to play, you little suckers. But so I grabbed it, and I'm like, gosh, dog it. I was like, I got to spend $2,100 on a new freaking micro pod thingy for my already expensive factory software to work. So
Yep.
It looks like communication with the new one, you know, I haven't gone down the rabbit hole yet, but it's like they're just getting more difficult and more difficult.
Yeah, that's the truth of it. Well, Kory, I definitely appreciate you taking out so much time for our listeners today. We always love having you on the show. I am really glad that you're on here for my last episode. Is there anything that you want to share with the community that we haven't touched on already?
Man, the biggest thing is I've got so many people hitting me up, and you know I've been kind of a resource and a mentor almost to a lot of folks really going through the fight of the government. And the biggest thing I want to say is just keep going, keep your head up. Don't be watching all the TikTok and YouTube stuff saying delete your trucks or this is getting fixed tomorrow. This is a process. I've been able to deal with the government long enough that it moves slow, but it moves. So, you know, I think with a lot of the things that happen, I think a lot of people were treated very poorly during those times. I think some people were handed consent decrees that just absolutely put them out of business. They're unable to function. I know my consent decree alone, like it would have definitely tanked my company had I not been able to fund it from other sources. It would have been done. And PPEI has made a lot of money over the years and still makes a lot of money. And it wouldn't have been enough to combat the upfront cash charges it takes to actually make it through litigation, the legal process, you know? So a lot of folks are just left with a do or die choice, and they end up having to completely close their businesses. And I'm just really glad we didn't end up having to do that. But to all those folks, like, just stay moving forward, keep your head up, and, you know, get in touch. The biggest thing right now is this administration listens. Like, the comments on X, everything feeds into the algorithm. So if there's a super hot topic and it picks up steam on X, that gets picked up also by the systems that the government's using, and it will get noticed. So if there's any time in the world to contact a senator, congressman, if you ain't got no connections or no one around that you can get in with, just go talk to your local mayor. Like, talk to people, raise awareness, because we've got people need to be able to repair their vehicles or be able to afford to repair their vehicles, right? That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these folks that had very vicious consent decrees, not just in our industry, but everywhere, I think it needs to be revisited. I think there's stuff in there that needs to be looked at and make sure that everyone was treated fairly, because we're just learning nonstop that things that happened under that Biden administration just, it was kind of nasty.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, again, thank you for joining us, Kory. We really appreciate it.
For sure. Thank you, guys.
No problem. All right, and that was our interview with Kory Willis. Chris, he always has so many fun things to say.
I don't get speechless in a lot of interviews. That one was definitely a lot of loaded information.
Yeah.
Some stuff I didn't know, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I've read. I know that there was some alluding to, but talk about someone who, it's bigger than just him. It's bigger than just this one part of the industry.
Right.
Right? It's just insane.
The thing I always like about talking with Kory is he is a straight shooter where I can ask Kory wildly awkward, would be inappropriate for me to ask anybody else these questions, and he smiles move. And laughs. It is
it's
my
your signature move, and he took it.
He smiles and he seems at least he projects that he enjoys talking about this, and that's something that's so refreshing for me to be able to speak candidly and ask the questions that, like, listen, these fucking questions are getting asked. Oh, yeah. People are making these rumors. They're out there. They're spreading them. It's always great to be able to go to the source and just ask him straight up and have him just give you a straight up answer. Yeah. But yeah, I will definitely miss talking with guys like Kory, on this show.
Yeah, not for long.
Not for long.
Not for long.
This is it, Chris. This is our last outro together, homie.
Getting a little choked up, man.
Quit playing. Quit playing.
We've been doing this together for 7 years, 8 years.
Sounds right.
The podcast has been rolling for about 10.
Sounds plausible.
So you've been in this longer than I have. I got brought in shortly after, Danny had left.
That's right.
To see where the show goes from here will be interesting. I know it's some big shoes to fill. You were a very important part of the podcast, and honestly, I took a lot for granted, as much as you did do behind the scenes. So I appreciate everything that you've done on the show, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot of comments from the listeners and things like that. Just I don't think there's ever been one person that's ever called the shop or have come up to me at a show and hasn't mentioned how much they've enjoyed us and our banter together.
Yeah.
And that's always, important, right? Like,
there's more recorded hours of me and you talking than me and any other person in my life, Chris.
I believe that. I believe it.
I very wholeheartedly want to say thank you.
No, thank you.
It's hard, man. This is a hard change, but I think it's going to be a good one. I know you're going to crush it. I know you're going to keep the fucking show going, and people are going to love it, man. And I'm not leaving the industry. I'm moving on to a new company. You guys will hear about that in the future when I'm there. For here, I just want to say thank you to all of the listeners. Thank you to all of the guests.
Every person that's ever come up to us at UCC, at any of the diesel, dyno events, the sled pulls, anything, right? Like, you're a celebrity.
I don't know about that. I do also just want to say thank you so much in such a real way to Nick Pregnitz. Yeah, it's been real.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, man.
For sure.
Just for the listeners here, you and I have worked side by side. Like, we worked together in a cubicle.
Brushing elbows.
11 years.
11 years.
11-year relationship.
Yeah.
That's insane. I
love it. Well, listen, man, like I said, I'm not leaving the industry. No. I'm still going to see you, and don't think that I'm ever going to stop harassing you.
No, I hope you do.
For my last time, thank you so much for listening. This has been Paul Wilson.
And Chris Emke.
Thanks for joining us today, guys. This has been Paul Wilson.
And Chris Emke.
Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon. Welcome to the first ever episode of the Diesel Performance Podcast. I'm Paul Wilson. Thank you for joining us. This is Paul Wilson.
And Justin Tyson.
And we're reporting live from Diesel Power Challenge 2019. We're out here in Golden, Colorado today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Wilson. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Wilson, and this is Diesel Performance Podcast.